My renewed one. The most extraordinary healing does not arrive with a dramatic announcement. It comes the way the first light of a new day enters a room where someone has been lying awake in the dark for a very long time. Quietly, gradually, and then, suddenly, everything is different. Not because the room changed, not because the walls moved or the furniture rearranged itself, but because the light revealed what was already there waiting beneath the surface of all that darkness. Still whole, still real, still worth living. That is what I am doing in you right now. Not adding something foreign, not patching you with material borrowed from someone else's story. I am uncovering the version of you that existed before the weight settled in, before the exhaustion convinced you that tired was your permanent condition, before the grief made you forget what it felt like to breathe without effort. That person never left. That person was buried, yes, but buried is not the same as asterisk on asterisk, and I have been digging. What broke your stride was never meant to end your journey. I want you to understand something about the path you have been walking, because I think you have been reading the map wrong. You looked at the difficult stretch behind you and concluded that it was evidence of abandonment. You looked at the season of emotional depletion, the weeks and months, and possibly years, when simply getting through the day required every reserve you had, and you interpreted that as distance from me. But the difficult road is not the road I left you on. It is the road I walked with you, every single step of it. The stretches where your feet felt heavy and the destination seemed to have no end in sight. I was there. Not hovering at a safe distance, watching to see whether you would eventually figure it out. Right there. Beside you. Close enough that if you had been listening for it beneath all the noise of your own exhaustion, you would have heard my breathing. The path through hard places is not a detour from my plan. It is the asterisk plan asterisk. Not because I am indifferent to your suffering or because your tears are nothing to me, but because the person who emerges from the difficult stretch of road is always more equipped for what waits at the other side than the person who entered it. The valley does not disprove the destination. The valley is part of the route asterisk, and you are coming out of the valley. I need you to hear that not as a platitude, not as the kind of spiritual encouragement that sounds beautiful, but dissolves the moment you return to the reality of how you actually feel when you are alone and the weight settles back onto your chest. I need you to hear it as asterisk information. Factual, accurate, spiritually reliable information coming from the one who designed the road you are on and knows exactly where it leads. The hard season had a beginning. That means it has an end, and the end is closer than the middle made it seem. Let me take you back to the moment when the weariness began, not to revisit the pain for its own sake, but because I want you to see something that you missed the first time you lived through it. There was a moment, you know the one, when the strength you had been relying on ran out, when you reached into the reserves and found them empty, when you looked at the road still ahead and felt something inside you say, I cannot do this anymore. That moment felt like failure to you. It felt like the proof you had been afraid of finding, the evidence that you were not strong enough, not resilient enough, not faithful enough to make it through whatever you were facing. But from where I stood in that moment, that was not failure. That was the exact point at which you became completely available to me asterisk. The end of your strength is the beginning of mine. That truth is one of the most consistently misunderstood things about the way I work. People spend enormous amounts of energy trying to be strong enough, trying to hold themselves together through sheer determination, trying to maintain enough spiritual composure that they never have to arrive at that terrifying place of complete depletion. As if the goal were to never need me, as if faithfulness looked like self-sufficiency. But the deepest work I do in a human life almost always begins at the moment when self-sufficiency has been exhausted. Not because I require helplessness as a condition of my involvement, but because a person who still believes they can manage on their own is a person who is not yet fully open to receiving what I am offering. When the hands finally empty of everything they have been gripping, they are finally in the position to receive. And your hands have been emptying. I watched the process. I watched you lose grip on things you had been holding so tightly that your knuckles had gone white from the effort. The certainty about how your life was supposed to look. The confidence that the path you had mapped for yourself was the one I had actually marked out for you. The energy that had been sustaining a version of yourself that was performing rather than resting, striving rather than receiving, moving through every day on willpower and discipline, and the quietly desperate determination not to let anyone see how close to breaking you actually were. Those things leaving your hands was not loss, it was asterisk preparation. What was removed created the space for what is coming, and what is coming is worth every inch of empty space the letting go produced. What broke your stride was never meant to end your journey. I want to speak very directly about the depression, not around it, not with gentle euphemisms that make the conversation more comfortable but less honest. I know what depression feels like from the inside because I have sat inside it with you, not as an observer, as a companion. The flatness that settles over everything when the chemicals that are supposed to make life feel worth engaging with have become depleted. The strange, terrible way that even things you know should matter, things you know you love, can feel unreachable, as if someone installed thick glass between you and every experience that used to nourish your soul. The exhaustion that sleep does not fix. The weight that is not located in any specific muscle, but is somehow present in all of them simultaneously. The quiet that your mind sometimes fills with thoughts so dark and so specific that you were frightened by your own inner voice and did not know who to tell. I heard all of it, not just the prayers you managed to form, not just the moments when you pulled yourself together enough to come to me with something that resembled coherent communication. I heard the sounds you made when you were alone that were not quite words, but that carried more honest information about your condition than any sermon you ever sat through or any prayer you ever offered in public. The sighs that came from a place too deep for language. The sounds that escaped when the pressure became momentarily unbearable before you pushed it back down and continued performing normalcy for the people around you. I heard every single one, and not one of them fell to the ground unheard. Every sound you made in your suffering reached me with perfect clarity, and every one of them was met with a response that has been traveling toward you ever since. The response is arriving now. It does not arrive all at once, because healing that arrives all at once tends to be brittle. The person who is healed instantaneously from a deep wound sometimes does not know how to live in health, because they were not given the time to develop the understanding that allows health to be sustained. The healing I am bringing to you is layered asterisk. It is being released in portions that your soul can integrate without being overwhelmed. Some of it has already arrived without your awareness of it, deposited into the landscape of your spirit in the quiet moments when you were not watching for anything in particular. New thoughts that felt slightly less heavy than the previous ones. A moment of unexpected laughter that surprised you. A small window of clarity in the middle of a day that had been gray. A sense, brief and tentative, but undeniable, that the path might not be as endless as it appeared the week before. Those were not random fluctuations. Those were asterisk installments of a healing that is building toward completion. Step toward me in this season carrying the knowledge that you are moving toward wholeness, not away from it. Every step counts. Every small movement in my direction is received with the same celebration that a father gives when watching a child learn to walk, with absolute delight and not a single trace of impatience at the pace. Your mind is being renewed. I want to be specific about this, because the mind is where so much of the battle for your well-being is actually fought. And I do not want you to underestimate what I am doing in that territory. The disordered thoughts that have been running in loops, the cycles of anxiety and self-accusation and catastrophic projection that have exhausted you from the inside out, those patterns are being asterisk interrupted. Not by your own effort, because your own effort to stop the spirals has mostly produced more spinning rather than less, but by something arriving from outside the system entirely. When I said I am ordering your thoughts, I meant it practically. I am reaching into the specific neural pathways that have been grooved by repetition and suffering and establishing new roots, restoring order where there was only noise, introducing clarity where there was only confusion and contradiction, and the deafening collision of too many unresolved fears. I am releasing a calm that does not depend on circumstances improving first. The peace I am giving you does not wait for things to be resolved before it arrives. It comes asterisk ahead of the resolution. It walks into the middle of the unfinished story and sits down and refuses to be moved by the fact that the last chapter has not been written yet. That kind of peace seems illogical to the mind that equates peace with the absence of problems. But the peace I offer is not the peace of having no problems. It is the peace of having a companion in the middle of them who is untroubled by their size and has already seen the outcome. I have already seen the outcome, and what I see ahead of you on this road makes me not troubled, but not cautiously optimistic, genuinely delighted at what you are walking toward without yet knowing it. The destination I have prepared for this stretch of your journey is not just relief from what you have been enduring. It is expansion. It is a version of your life and your spirit that is richer and deeper and more genuinely alive than the version that existed before the hard season began. Because the person who comes through the valley carries something they did not have before. Depth. Earned, unlosable, permanent depth. A quality of understanding and compassion and spiritual perception that cannot be manufactured by any other means. And that will become one of the most significant things you have to offer the world in the chapters that follow this one. The road ahead is not what you feared. Let me walk you toward it. I see you on the days when the only movement you managed was the movement required to breathe. The days that felt like failure simply because you did not accomplish anything visible, did not check anything off any list, did not produce any evidence of functionality that the world around you would recognize as worthwhile. I need to tell you something about those days that the world will not tell you, and that the voice of self-accusation has actively been hiding from you. Those were not the days you fell behind. Those were the days your soul was doing its most important work. Survival. Genuine survival of the kind your spirit was engaged in during the hardest seasons is not passive. It is labor. Profound, costly, often invisible labor that required everything you had and produced the kind of internal infrastructure that cannot be built any other way. You did not waste the hard season. You invested it. Every day you chose to stay. Every day you got up and put one foot in front of the other even when every instinct in your body was protesting. Every day you reached toward me, even imperfectly, even with the half-faith that was the best you could manage when your reserves were at their lowest. Every one of those days was a deposit, and deposits accumulate. The account has been building quietly, consistently, in the background of your awareness. And what has accumulated there is something that is about to become visible in your experience in ways that will reframe the meaning of the entire difficult season for you. You are going to look back at this stretch of road and recognize it as the place where you became who you needed to be for everything that is coming. I want to address the shame you have been carrying about the struggle itself. The deep, quiet conviction that someone with real faith would not have fallen into this kind of darkness. That someone who truly trusted me would not have spent those stretches of time feeling so disconnected from the very relationship they were supposed to be drawing strength from. That depression or anxiety or emotional depletion somehow indicates a spiritual deficiency that marks you as lesser among those who walk with me. That belief is not from me, not a word of it, and I want to dismantle it completely before it costs you one more day of unnecessary guilt layered on top of genuine struggle. Some of the most faithful people who have ever walked the earth experience the kind of darkness you have been living in. The great poet of the Psalms cried from a pit so dark he felt forsaken by the very God who was writing his story. One of my most passionate messengers sat under a tree and told me he had had enough. A man described in my word as a friend of mine spent years in darkness, so comprehensive that he could not find the words to describe what he was enduring to the people who came to offer him comfort. None of that darkness was a reflection of their spiritual inadequacy. All of it was part of the journey that made them into the voices that have brought comfort and courage to millions of people across thousands of years. Your darkness is not your disqualification. It is part of your asterisk testimony. And your testimony is going to reach people in places that only someone who has genuinely been through the dark can reach. What broke your stride was never meant to end your journey. I am restoring something very specific in you right now, and I want to name it so you can recognize it when you feel it returning. The asterisk desire to live. Not the biological drive that keeps the body functioning regardless of how the soul feels about it. The genuine, visceral wanting to be here. The sense that the day ahead contains something worth getting up for. The feeling of leaning toward tomorrow instead of dreading it. The experience of looking at your own life and feeling, even fleetingly, even faintly, something that resembles appreciation rather than endurance. That desire was not destroyed during the hard season. It was buried under weight that was never yours to carry alone. And as I lift that weight layer by layer, with the patience and precision of someone who knows exactly what was placed where and the order in which it needs to be removed, the desire is emerging again. You are going to want asterisk things again. Good things. Simple things. The warmth of a good conversation that goes longer than you planned. The pleasure of a meal eaten without the cloud of anxiety turning everything gray. The physical sensation of your body moving through the world with energy instead of existing in it like a piece of furniture. The creative impulse that used to light up your mind before the darkness dimmed it. The spiritual hunger that used to pull you toward me with a kind of joy, rather than the weary obligation that has been the closest thing to desire available to you in the lean season. These things are coming back. They are already returning, in ways small enough that you might mistake them for accidents rather than recognizing them as the evidence of a healing that has been in progress longer than you realized. Let me tell you about the moment you are walking toward, not the distant vision of an eventual arrival at the end of the road, because that thinking can make the current stretch feel interminable. I am talking about a specific, near moment that is approaching you on this path right now, before you have traveled much further. A moment of genuine lightness, not a performance of it, not the exhausted smile you produce for people who ask how you are doing when the honest answer would take longer than you have the energy to give. A asterisk real asterisk one, the kind that surprises you when it appears, that catches you off guard in an ordinary moment, that makes you pause because it has been so long since you felt it without effort that you had almost forgotten what it felt like from the inside. That moment is not far from where you are standing. I have been preparing the ground for it, clearing the path of specific obstacles that have been blocking the natural emergence of joy in your life. Not joy as a feeling you manufacture through effort or maintain through discipline. Joy as the asterisk natural state of a soul that has been released from the things that were suppressing it. The anxious thoughts that have been consuming the mental and emotional energy that should have been available for living. The grief you have been carrying that was never processed, that was pushed down and covered over because there was never a safe enough moment or a trusted enough space to let it fully surface and move through you. The accumulated weight of things said and unsaid, done and undone, that have been pressing on your spirit with a force you may not have even consciously named, but that your body and your emotions have been responding to in very tangible ways. All of that is being addressed, not bypassed, addressed asterisk. I do not produce healing by skipping over the wounds. I heal by going asterisk through them with you, by illuminating what needs to be seen and releasing what needs to be released, and establishing what needs to be established in the interior landscape of who you are. This is thorough work, patient work, the kind of work that does not show visible results in the first stages, but that is fundamentally altering the architecture of your inner world in ways that will produce a stability you have never experienced before. Not a fragile stability that depends on nothing going wrong. Deep stability rooted in the knowledge of who you are and whose you are, and where this road ultimately leads. You belong to me. That is the foundation beneath every other truth I will ever speak to you, not as an institution claims ownership of its members, not as a master claims possession of a servant. The way father holds a child in his heart, permanently, unconditionally, without a single caveat or expiration date. I claimed you before you knew my name. I wrote your story before the opening lines were visible to you. And the story I am writing over your life has not been altered by a single difficult chapter you have lived through. The dark passages did not revise my intentions. The seasons of doubt did not cause me to reconsider the destination I chose for you. The moments when you pulled away from me out of pain or anger or simple depletion did not create distance that you are now responsible for closing. The distance was never as large as it felt from your side of it, and it is closing now. Not because you have managed to pull yourself together enough to deserve closeness, but because I am moving toward you with the same relentless, uncomplicated love that has been moving toward you since before you drew your first breath. Lean back into me, not with the strained effort of someone trying to construct trust out of nothing, with the simple movement of someone who is tired and has finally stopped fighting the arms that have been waiting to hold them. The healing in your emotions is connected to the healing in your body, and I want to address that connection directly. The weight you have been carrying in your spirit has not been invisible to your physical frame. Bodies are not separate from souls. What the soul endures, the body registers. The tension that lives in your shoulders, the tightness that takes up residence in your chest, the restlessness that makes genuine rest feel like something you observe in other people rather than access yourself. These are not coincidences, not simple physical complaints unrelated to everything your spirit has been processing. They are the body's honest report on the condition of the interior world. And as the interior world heals, those reports will change. Rest is coming. Not simply the rest of a body that eventually collapses from exhaustion and sleeps whether or not the mind cooperates. Genuine rest, the kind that restores instead of merely pausing the depletion. The kind that you wake from feeling that something has been returned to you. The kind that involves a quieting of the mental noise that has been running beneath every surface of your days. The constant background processing of unresolved fears and unmade decisions and unfinished worrying. When your soul finds its rest in me, the body follows, and your soul is finding its rest. You may not have noticed it yet because the finding is gradual, but the movement is happening, and its direction is toward the kind of deep, settled peace that does not evaporate when the circumstances of your day become difficult. Come into my presence in this season knowing, at the deepest level your soul is capable of knowing, that every step of your recovery is a step I am walking beside you. Not behind you watching, beside you, breathing the same air of this particular stretch of road, feeling the same gradient of incline, present for every difficulty and every small breakthrough and every moment of ordinary continuation that other people will never see, but that I will never stop honoring. There is something I want to celebrate with you, and I realize that celebrating may feel premature from where you are standing, because you can still feel the residue of the hard season on everything you touch. But I need you to hear this because it is true, and because the truth of it will accelerate the very healing you are waiting for. You made it. Through every stretch of road that felt impossible, you made it. Through the nights that seemed designed never to end, you made it. Through the days when the only prayer you could offer was a wordless cry of exhaustion that you were not even sure reached beyond the ceiling of the room you were sitting in, you made it. You are here, present, breathing, still in relationship with me, still on the path, still moving toward the destination, even on the days when it felt like you were standing completely still. The fact that you are here, receiving this message, indicates that the part of you that chooses life has not been extinguished. And that part of you is the one I have been carefully, consistently keeping alive through every season that tried to put it out. That is worth celebrating, not with the performative joy of someone who has already arrived and no longer remembers the difficulty of the road, with the quiet, deep gratitude of someone who has been through something real and is beginning to see the other side. That kind of gratitude has a quality to it that superficial happiness does not carry. It is saturated with asterisk knowledge, with an understanding of what it cost to arrive here, with an appreciation for the path that is rooted in having genuinely needed it rather than simply walked it casually. And that quality of gratitude is one of the most powerful things a human soul can carry, because it has been refined by the very fire it survived. I am so proud of you for surviving this, not with disappointment at how the surviving looked, with genuine pride at the fact that you chose, again and again and again, in the face of every argument against it, to stay. That choice was not small. In the seasons when staying required everything you had and produced nothing visible in return, that choice was an act of profound courage. And I do not take it lightly. I do not add it to a ledger of things you did right that I will eventually balance against the things you did wrong. I hold it as evidence of something real inside you, something that the darkness tried to convince you did not exist anymore, but that has been burning quietly in the core of your spirit all along, waiting for a season when the weight lifted enough for the flame to breathe. The flame is breathing now. There is a new chapter beginning in your life that has a different texture from the one you have been living in. I want to describe some of what it contains, so that, when you begin to encounter it, you recognize it as the arrival of what I promised rather than dismissing it as temporary or too good to trust. In this chapter asterisk, you will find your thoughts arriving in the morning with less weight attached to them. The dread that used to greet you before you were fully awake, that immediate sense of burden landing on your chest before the day had even been given a chance to be whatever it might actually turn out to be, will begin to loosen. Not all at once, but with the kind of steady, measurable progress that, when you look back a few weeks from now, will be genuinely undeniable. In this chapter asterisk, you will find that connections with the people around you feel less like performances and more like actual exchanges. The exhaustion of maintaining appearances, of producing the version of yourself that meets other people's expectations and conceals the cost of the maintenance, will start to ease as the gap between your inner experience and your outer presentation begins to close. You will not need to perform as much, because you will not be managing as much. The weight you were carrying was creating the gap. As the weight goes, the performance becomes unnecessary. In this chapter asterisk, you will find that the future does not feel like a threat. The shift will be subtle at first, almost imperceptible. But there will be moments, small windows of possibility, when you look toward what is ahead and feel something other than the anticipation of more difficulty. Something that resembles asterisk curiosity asterisk. Something that has notes of genuine interest in what might be coming, rather than only vigilance against what might go wrong. That shift is the shift of a soul that is beginning to trust again, not naively, not without memory of the cost of trusting in the past, but with the seasoned confidence of someone who has been through enough to know that the one who was faithful in the hard chapter is capable of being extraordinary in the next one. What broke your stride was never meant to end your journey. I am a shepherd. I need you to let that image sit in your spirit for a while, because I chose that image carefully for a reason that is directly relevant to where you are on this road. A shepherd does not walk ahead of the flock and expect them to keep up. A shepherd adjusts the pace of the entire movement to accommodate the members who are moving most slowly. When a sheep is injured, the shepherd does not leave it at the side of the road with instructions to catch up when it feels better. The shepherd stops, bends down, lifts, carries. Not because the sheep earned that treatment through superior performance or exceptional loyalty, but because the sheep belongs to the shepherd, and belonging, in the vocabulary of a true shepherd, creates an obligation that injury does not diminish. You have been the sheep that needed to be carried, and I have been carrying you, even in the stretches when it did not feel like it, even in the seasons when the experience of being carried felt more like being dragged than held. The road felt rough because roads are rough when you are exhausted. The pace felt relentless because everything feels relentless when you have no reserves. But you were not abandoned on the side of the road. You were in the arms of the shepherd the entire time, and those arms did not put you down. They are not putting you down now, and the destination they are carrying you toward is the green pasture, the still water, the place of genuine restoration where the soul is renewed, and the weariness is replaced with something that bears an actual resemblance to flourishing. The pasture is not a reward for surviving the hard road. It is the destination the hard road was always leading toward. Let me speak about the specific renewal that is happening in your relationship with hope. Hope is a complicated thing for someone who has been through what you have been through, because hope that has been disappointed repeatedly starts to feel like a liability rather than an asset. The more times you allowed yourself to hope for specific things and watched those hopes fall short of what you were reaching for, the more the act of hopping itself began to feel risky, dangerous, like a movement that opened you up to a cost you were not sure you could afford anymore. And so you developed a kind of protective distance from hope, keeping it at arm's length, not fully extinguishing it, but refusing to let it get close enough to hurt you when it disappointed. I understand that. I do not judge it. It was a reasonable response to the experience you had lived through. But I want to offer you something that is different from the hope that disappointed you. Not hope in a specific outcome, by a specific date through a specific mechanism. Not hope that depends on your circumstances behaving in a particular way, or on people responding in the way you need them to respond, or on doors opening in the timeline you have set for them. What I am offering is hope in a person in me specifically and only in me. Not in my plans performing according to your understanding of what healing should look like or how restoration should arrive, but in the character of the one who makes the plans, the one who has never once, in the entire history of every soul who ever called out to me in genuine need, failed to show up. Not in the way they expected, sometimes not in a way they even recognized as an answer until much later. But always in a way that carried them through to the other side of whatever they were facing. That is the hope I am restoring in you, not the fragile, performance-dependent kind, the settled, character-rooted kind, the kind that does not shatter when circumstances fail to cooperate, because it was never placed in the circumstances in the first place. It was placed in me, and I am not subject to the same limitations as the circumstances that previously disappointed you. Every step of your recovery is a step I am walking beside you. There are people in your life who do not yet know what you have been through, not because you chose to hide it dishonestly, but because the season of deep struggle is often one that is walked largely in private, because the depth of what is happening inside does not translate easily into the kind of language that is appropriate for ordinary conversation. But the day is coming when your testimony, the lived, embodied, earned testimony of what you experienced and how you came through it and what you discovered about me in the process, will be the exact thing that another person desperately needs to hear. Not because your story is spectacular or exceptional, but because it is real, because it was lived by an actual person who was genuinely in the darkness and was genuinely brought out of it, and can speak about both realities without embellishment, without a neatly packaged ending that erases the cost of the journey. Your story is already being made into something, not something that erases the hard parts, something that uses asterisk them, something that transforms the specific weight you have been carrying into a specific capacity to carry something for someone else. The depth of your empathy for people in the dark is being built right now by the fact that you have been asterisk in asterisk it. The quality of your presence with people who are suffering is being refined right now by the fact that you have asterisk suffered. The authority you will carry when you speak words of hope into someone else's desperate situation is being established right now by the fact that you genuinely had to fight for hope in your own. None of the hard season is being wasted. All of it is being converted into something that will serve both you and others for the rest of your life and beyond. I am not a God who lets suffering be purposeless. I am a God who is capable of taking every painful element of your story and weaving it into something that produces beauty, not despite the difficulty, but through asterisk it, not someday in a vague theological sense, in the actual, concrete, tangible chapters of your life that are still being written. The story is not finished. The hard stretch was a real part of it, but it was never the asterisk final asterisk part. And the chapters that follow this one will be written with the understanding and the depth and the earned authority of someone who has been through the valley and come out the other side with something the mountaintop alone could never have produced. You are not behind. You are exactly where I need you to be to receive what is coming. The road ahead is not empty. I want you to know this, because the depression has a way of making the future look like a long, featureless expanse of more of the same, a gray continuation of the gray that has already been. But the road ahead is asterisk populated with specific things that I have placed there in advance of your arrival. Conversations that will rearrange your understanding of yourself in the most welcome way. Relationships, both renewed and entirely new, that will carry a quality of genuine connection that the depleted season made feel permanently unavailable. Moments of creative or spiritual or professional engagement that will reawaken parts of you that you had concluded were permanently dormant. Experiences of joy that are not contingent on everything going right, but that arrive with the inexplicable weightlessness of grace, given freely to a soul that has learned, through the hardest kind of instruction, not to take the gift for granted. All of that is on the road, specifically placed with your name attached to each one, not by chance, not by the random arrangement of a universe without intention, but by the deliberate orchestration of a God who knows your name and your story and the specific things that your specific soul requires to flourish in the specific season that is arriving. You are walking toward something worth reaching. Let the healing continue without resistance. That is all I am asking of you in this season, not extraordinary faith, not spiritual performance that would look impressive to observers, not the managed, controlled version of receiving that tries to evaluate each arriving piece of healing and determine whether it is real before allowing itself to be affected by it. Just the simple, quiet openness of a person who has decided to stop fighting the process and allow what is arriving to arrive asterisk. You do not have to understand the mechanism of your own healing to benefit from it. You do not have to feel worthy of it for it to be effective. You do not have to resolve every theological question about why the hard season was allowed to happen in order to receive the restoration that follows it. You only have to be here, present, breathing, leaning slightly in my direction, willing to believe, even imperfectly, even on the days when belief feels more like desperate wishing than settled conviction, that the one who designed your journey has not stopped being the one who is guiding it. I have not stopped guiding it, not for a single day. What broke your stride was never meant to end your journey. And your journey is not ending. It is asterisk changing. It is crossing from one terrain into another, from the dry and rocky stretch into the wider, more open land that exists on the other side of the valley you have been crossing. The crossing is not complete yet, but you are no longer at the beginning of it. You are closer to the other side than you know. And on the other side, everything that the darkness convinced you was permanently out of reach is waiting, not as a distant, theoretical possibility, as a real, approaching, already being prepared reality that is moving toward you with the same faithfulness and the same precision that have characterized every other moment in the story of your life when I delivered on what I promised. I am delivering on what I promised. Let me speak over the specific wounds that the difficult season opened in you, the places where the darkness found the cracks and deepened them, the self-worth that took a steady battering from the internal voice that equated your inability to function at full capacity with your value as a person, as if worth were a performance metric rather than a birthright. That wound is being addressed. The truth I am speaking into it is not flattery or reassurance designed to make you feel temporarily better. It is the permanent, irreducible fact of who you are in my eyes, and my eyes are the ones that see correctly. Your worth is not derived from your output. It is not contingent on your productivity. It is not subject to revision based on how many days you managed to function versus how many days you simply endured. Your worth is established. It was established before you produced a single thing, before you accomplished anything that the world would recognize as significant, before you even had the capacity to fail, and it has not moved a millimeter since. The relationships that the difficult season put under strain are also being tended. I know the ones you are thinking of. The connections that became harder to maintain when the energy required to show up in them exceeded what you had available. The friendships that thinned or cooled, not from any intentional withdrawal, but simply from the reduced capacity of someone who was surviving rather than thriving. Some of those connections are going to be renewed with a warmth that surprises both you and the other person. Some of them will require a conversation, an honest one, where the truth of what you have been through is allowed into the space between you and received with more understanding than the shame has been telling you would be met with. And some of them will simply resume naturally without formal repair, as your energy returns and the availability that was reduced by the hard season begins to expand again. Connection is returning to your life. The quality of presence that you bring to the people you care about is not permanently diminished. It is temporarily resting, like a muscle that had been working without adequate recovery time and needed to be treated with the kind of patient care that allows genuine restoration rather than just temporary relief. The rest is almost sufficient. The return is already beginning, and the path forward is opening. Something I want to address with complete honesty is the way that spiritual exhaustion can masquerade as spiritual failure. When you are depleted to the point where prayer feels like shouting into an empty room, when reading my word feels like trying to receive nutrition from a page rather than a meal, when worship that once came easily now feels distant and forced, and somehow inauthentic compared to what it used to feel like. The temptation is to interpret those experiences as evidence that your connection with me has been severed, as if the dryness itself is proof of separation. But dryness is not separation. A field in drought is not a field that has been abandoned. It is a field that is waiting for rain, and rain is not withheld from fields in drought. Rain is specifically asterisk for fields in drought. Your spiritual dryness, as real and as uncomfortable as it has been, was never evidence of my withdrawal. It was evidence of your need, and my response to need is never withdrawal. My response to need is always asterisk movement toward. Moving toward you has been my consistent activity throughout every dry stretch you have walked through. Every prayer that felt unheard was asterisk heard asterisk. Fully, completely, with the kind of attentiveness that does not require volume or eloquence or emotional energy on your part to be registered on mine. Your whispered, exhausted, barely formed reaching toward me in the moments when that was all you had carried the same weight in my presence as your most articulate, spirit-filled prayer in your best season. Because what I receive is not the quality of your spiritual presentation. What reaches me is the asterisk orientation of your heart asterisk. And your heart, even at its most depleted, has been oriented toward me. That has never changed. And that orientation is the thing I have been working with, the raw material from which I have been building something that will outlast the hard season by a very long distance. Consider what it means that you are still here, not just physically, though that matters too, spiritually. You did not walk away. You did not close the door on your relationship with me and decide that the cost of continuing to believe was higher than you were willing to pay. Even in the moments when belief felt like the most difficult thing available to you, even in the stretches when doubt was louder than certainty, and the evidence of my goodness felt obscured by the weight of everything you were enduring, you did not leave. That faithfulness, imperfect as it felt from your side of the experience, is not invisible to me. Every day you stayed is a day inscribed in the record of your journey, and what that record shows is a person whose love for me proved more durable than the hardest thing life brought against it. Courage does not always announce itself. It rarely looks the way movies have trained you to expect it to look. Courage, in the real and unedited version that gets lived in ordinary human lives, often looks like simply asterisk continuing. Getting up and putting one foot in front of the other with no fanfare and no visible reward, and no certainty that the next step will be any more enlightened than the last one. That is what you have been doing. And from my perspective, from the perspective of someone who has watched human courage in every form across every century, that kind of endurance, quiet, unglamorous, day by day, is among the most impressive things a person can demonstrate. Let me speak now about the specific changes that are beginning to register in you, even if you have not yet named them. There is a quality to your awareness that has begun to shift, subtly, but measurably, from the months when everything was at its most compressed and gray. Certain things that used to require enormous effort now require slightly asterisk less asterisk. Certain thoughts that used to loop endlessly have begun to loop with less frequency, as if the grooves that repetition had worn deep are gradually being filled in with something new. Moments of genuine connection with other people, however brief, have begun to feel slightly more accessible than they did when the exhaustion was at its peak. These changes are small enough that you might discount them, small enough that the critical voice in your head might argue they are not real, or not significant enough to constitute evidence of anything meaningful. But small changes are exactly how healing begins when it is being built to last asterisk. Dramatic change is often fragile. Gradual, layered, deeply integrated change is the kind that holds. Hold on to what is returning. Let it have more space in your awareness than the part of you that is still waiting for everything to feel dramatically different all at once. Because the dramatic moment, the one where everything feels transformed and the weight lifts entirely, and you step into a completely new experience of your own life, is not the asterisk beginning asterisk of healing. It is the moment you look back and realize how much healing had already happened before you had a name for what you were experiencing. Right now in this moment, that healing is already in progress. Whether or not it feels like it from where you are standing, from where I am standing, it is visible, it is real, and it is building toward exactly what I promised you. There is also something I want to name about what has been asterisk preserved in you during this hard season that you may have lost sight of entirely, because the darkness made taking inventory feel impossible. Your capacity for asterisk depth has been intensified. Your understanding of what truly matters has been clarified. Your compassion for other people who are suffering has been expanded beyond what comfortable seasons could ever have produced. Your tolerance for the complexity of other people's pain, for the messiness of real healing and imperfect faith and honest doubt, has been deepened by the fact that you have lived inside that complexity yourself rather than observing it from a safe distance. These are not consolation prizes for having endured something difficult. These are asterisk genuine gains, things of real and lasting value that you now carry that you did not carry before, and they will make you more fully who you were designed to be, more equipped for the assignments that are waiting ahead of you than any season of uninterrupted ease could have produced. Your suffering was not wasted. Nothing in your story has been wasted. Not a single day, not a single tear, not a single prayer that felt like it dissolved before it reached me. Everything has been counted, kept, and is being woven into the continuation of your story with a level of craft and intentionality that will eventually produce something that astonishes you. Not because suffering itself is good, but because I am good, and everything I touch, including the painful chapters of human lives, I am capable of turning toward beauty and meaning and purpose that outlasts the pain itself by an infinite margin. Walk into what is ahead with your head lifted, not because there is nothing difficult remaining, but because who walks beside you makes every difficult thing navigable, and who waits at the destination makes every step toward it worth taking. I want to close this part of our conversation by saying something that I want to live inside you long after the other words have settled and moved through you. You are not broken in a way that requires a replacement. You are not damaged in a way that removes you from the road. You are not behind in any way that the grace I am releasing over your journey cannot cover and redeem. You are a person in the process of being restored by a God who specializes in restoration, and who does not produce results that merely return things to their previous condition. When I restore something, I return it better than it was. The version of your life and your soul that is emerging from this season is not the pre-difficulty version with the hard parts patched over. It is something richer, something that carries the depth and the tenderness and the hard-won understanding that only comes from having been through the kind of thing you have been through, and arrived on the other side of it still believing in the goodness of the one who designed the road. Your road is good. Even the hard parts were good, in the way that things that cost you something and produce something real and permanent in you are good. Not pleasant, not easy, not things you would have chosen, but good part of a larger story that is being written with extraordinary care by someone who loves you more than language has the capacity to express, and who has every intention of bringing that story to a conclusion so beautiful it will leave you without adequate words to describe it. One more thing before we reach the closing of this conversation, and it is perhaps the most personal thing I want to say. Among everything I have spoken over you in these words, among all the truths about healing and restoration and the road ahead, underneath all of it is something simpler than any of those things. Something that does not require understanding or even agreement in order to be fully true. Here it is, stated without ornamentation. I love you. Not as a statement of theological position. Not as a general declaration that applies equally to all of humanity in a way that means everything and nothing simultaneously. As a specific, directed, individual love that is aimed at you at the particular you that has been sitting with this message, with your specific history and your specific wounds and your specific questions and your specific hopes that have survived everything thrown against them. That you, I love that you, deeply, permanently, without revision, without condition, without any version of yourself being capable of exhausting what I feel for you. Carry that with you onto the road ahead. When the day brings something that tries to shake your confidence in where you are going, return to this. When doubt arrives at the door of your spirit and makes its case for why the destination might not exist or might not be for you specifically, return to this. When the old weight tries to resettle on your shoulders with the familiar argument that you were foolish to believe things could actually be different, return to this. Not to a theology or a formula or a set of spiritual practices. To a person To me To the one who designed your journey, who has been walking it beside you, and who is not finished with what was begun in you at the very first moment you breathed air into lungs I designed specifically for the voice you carry. Your voice matters. Your life matters. Your continuation on this road matters enormously, both to me and to the people who are waiting ahead of you on the path for someone who has been where you have been and emerged from it with the kind of light that only the redeemed carry. Walk forward, the road is ready, the destination is real. And you do not walk it alone. Amen.